What's up everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and anything else we find interesting. And as usual, it's time to check out some more Reddit posts. So be sure to share your thoughts about today's stories down in the comments and let's get into it. Today I effed up by misinterpreting the CEO's arm gesture in a job interview, and then locking arms with him as if we were best friends forever. Obligatory, this happened yesterday. The memory still makes me cringe and cry. I had a job interview with the CEO, in person, despite COVID. I was super nervous as per usual, maybe even more than usual because I really wanted this job. I tried to calm myself down, but by the time the interviewer showed up, I could literally feel my heartbeat in my throat. He, 50-ish male, walked down the stairs towards me in his nice suit, but stopped halfway down. I figured the interview would take place upstairs, so I got up to meet him. And as I was walking up the stairs towards him, he put his arm up, and his elbow out, and my brain just sort of went error. I suppose it could have only meant two things. It could have meant A, please take my arm, milady, so I can escort you to the room as if we're strolling down the promenade together. Or B, please give me an elbow bump since we can't shake hands. Which is really not an uncommon gesture at all in the Netherlands. So what did I do? Yes, I went with option A, and I eagerly locked arms with this strange man that I'd never met before in my life. As if saying, yes, good sir, let's go for that stroll. And then we just stood there, arm in arm, halfway up the stairs, sheepishly staring at each other. I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. I just didn't know what to do next, and I don't think he'd fully understood what had happened, so neither of us moved. When he'd finally gathered his senses, he said, I meant to give you an elbow bump. After which I quickly put as much distance between us as I could and mumbled, Right, yes, that makes much more sense. Because it did, let's face it. And then we had the interview. Update. Oh my word, I've been invited to the second round of interviews. Update 2. Third interview is in a week's time. This is dragging on, sorry. Update 3. I got the job. Richmond, Virginia. I caused an accident a year and a half ago. Injured party refusing settlement from my insurance company. She's demanding that the money come from me so that I can, quote, know the pain she feels. I am dealing with a smallish insurance company and they've been wonderful to work with and they've been communicating with me. They told me that I do not need to take any further action at this point in time, but I wanted to get some understanding as to whether or not this lady has any legal ground to stand on. A combination of nasty weather, my unfamiliarity with the area I was driving, and speed on my part caused me to be at fault for a car accident. I ended up rear-ending a woman. My car equals 2008 Honda Civic. Her car equals 2014 Ford Expedition. At around 35 miles per hour on a 25 mile per hour road. She was moving about 10 to 15 miles per hour at the time of the rear-ending. My car was totaled. Her car needed barely $2,500 worth of repairs. This woman has racked up what amounts to something on the order of $25,000 worth of medical bills. This spans chiropractic appointments to home and doctor office-based physical therapy, etc. Her medical insurance has covered all of this at this point. Last week, my insurance company reached a verbal agreement with her and her lawyer for $40,000. She is now refusing the money from the insurance company. She is demanding that the money come from me personally. She thinks that this will help me, quote, learn my lesson. My insurance company shared with me a letter she wrote them. A 12-page front and back, what I am calling manifesto. No, I am not posting it here. I would also like to point out that she's 24 years old, and the letter makes it sound like she's an 84-year-old woman on her deathbed with all her listed ailments. I am not trying to diminish whatever pain she's in or think she's in, but come on, right? So does she have any legal standing on her demand that I pay versus my insurance paying her? She made it very clear in her letter that unless we can prove the money came from my bank account, she will refuse the funds. Update. The lady I hit for several weeks refused to take the verbally agreed upon settlement, and my insurance company put it on the back burner. In June, they gave her 30 days to respond or they would rescind the offer. In the middle of June, she hired a lawyer not connected to her insurance, rather a personal injury attorney. I got a letter from the law firm telling me that I was going to be sued if I did not compensate their client the $40,000 she thinks she's owed from the car accident. I kicked the letter off to my insurance company. I first called, then emailed it. My adjuster that I was working with had an audible after I read him the letter, then a strained chuckle. We will take care of this. I heard back from them on Wednesday the 5th. They sent all documentation of the accident, the audio recording of her verbally agreeing to the settlement amount, and her manifesto to her newly hired attorney. They apparently also included a note that stated that they were giving her until the end of June to accept the money, or they would rescind the offer if she did not get this taken care of soon. My adjuster called me this morning to tell me that the issue has been resolved. She has signed an agreement yesterday that she cannot sue if she takes the money. According to my adjuster, they re-offered her the $40,000 because of two things. Primarily, they wanted this to just go away and they did not want to be sued for more. Second, they apparently know of this personal injury attorney. He requires a very high contingency percentage, and this woman essentially played herself by hiring someone that was not necessary. He collected on her behalf and took his cut. That's all I know, so yeah. Issue resolved, and my insurance has jumped up a small bit in cost due to the accident. Fainted on 3+ hour idle plane with no AC. Last week, I was to board their plane going to Paris from New York City. The flight was delayed several hours, and they had us on the tarmac for over 3 hours without AC while they fixed an engine power problem. It was above 90 degrees on that idle plane, with no air circulation. The conditions were completely inhuman, which resulted in me vomiting, taking off my clothes, and losing consciousness before being dragged off the plane with an oxygen tank and sent to the hospital. There is video documentation of the entire event taken by another passenger. To summarize, the entire scenario is a complete nightmare. Passengers were screaming, trying to get off the plane, but the flight attendants said no one was allowed to deboard the plane. People were crowding in the service areas, trying to get tiny cups of water to stay hydrated. The bathrooms were backed up with huge lines. Everyone was dripping in sweat. The police were finally called onto the plane after 3 hours, not because I fainted, but because a passenger decided that the only way he would be let off the plane is if he broke the law. So he lit a cigarette, creating an extremely hazardous situation, and the plane doors were finally opened. I ended up in the hospital with no belongings, no shoes, house keys, laptop, etc. Everything was still on the flight to Paris. Because I had no way of getting into my apartment, I went straight to the airport from the hospital in order to see where my belongings were. Arriving at 5 a.m., I was told to wait until 8 a.m. for the airline workers to come in, because they were the only ones who had access to the storage room where my bags might be. When the employees finally arrived, I told them I needed to find my belongings immediately and needed to rebook my flight to Paris as soon as possible. The airline staff told me it is impossible to rebook or refund my flight because, according to their system, the incident was never recorded. When asked about what my file said, it stated that the flight was delayed and that I never boarded. How could that be possible when my boarding pass was scanned and my bags were on that flight? They said my only option was to provide my credit card info so they could use the info to buy me another flight, to which I coldly declined. This was the same conversation I had with 3 different representatives, one in person at the airport and 2 of their agents via customer service, phone. Now a week later, I'm in Paris with my belongings, except 160 EU that was stolen out of my carry-on after the incident. The airline finally started responding to my claims after I made a public post about them on Facebook describing my incident. They offered me refunds for all my flights, compensation for breaking, quote, EU Regulation 261/2004 Art 7, as well as several other expenses in my claim. However, I haven't replied nor accepted because I am waiting to see what a lawyer can advise. Boss said I must use my vacation before month end, but also no one can take time off. So I read the policy. Company sends a shiny HR email, subject line all caps, use it or lose it. We had to burn our remaining paid time off by the 30th or it evaporates into the sun. Same day my manager announces in stand-up that due to quarter end, no one can take time off until the 1st. I asked how to reconcile that. He shrugs and says talk to HR. HR says, talk to your manager. Cute loop. So I open the handbook because I'm a petty librarian when annoyed. Page 14 has this little sentence I never noticed. PTO requests not explicitly denied in writing within 48 business hours are considered approved. There is also a note that partial day PTO is allowed in 1-hour blocks. Thank you, legal team. I submitted 10 separate requests. 2 hours every morning next week, 2 hours every afternoon the week after, a random Friday 3 to 5 to watch a plumber, and 1 full day to visit my mom. I sent the requests in our HR portal, which auto-emails the manager and CCs a shared mailbox nobody watches. Then I went back to my tasks and set reminders. 48 business hours pass, no denial. The portal changes each request to approved, green checkmark, confetti gif. Monday comes, and at 9:58 I put a cheerful note in the team chat. Heading out, see you at noon. Manager pings me to hop on a client call. I reply with a screenshot of the policy and the portal approval. Silence. Then 3 dots typing. Then nothing. By Wednesday, our calendar looked like cheese. Half the team remembered they also had PTO sitting around and started filing it in little blocks. Meetings kept gliding with green bars. Finance realized that if we did not use the days now, they would be paid out at separation later, which they hate. HR wrote a new post saying we should coordinate, but that approvals already granted stand. My manager called a huddle to ask why productivity dipped. I said we are following HR's instruction to use PTO. He said he meant in November. I sent him the original email timestamped this month. He sighed and said he never thought anyone would actually read the handbook. I used every hour, took my mom to lunch, and my plumber fixed the cursed sink at 3:40 while I drank tea. Next week, a new policy appeared. PTO must be requested in full-day increments during quarter end, and managers must respond in 24 hours. Thanks for clarifying, truly. Anyway guys, hope you all enjoyed today's stories. If you did, be sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for more Reddit content like this. So stay tuned for more, and I'll see you next time.